I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We have a great show for you tonight. We're going to update ShotSpotter. That's the technology that listens for gunfire in the greater Portland area, or could if it's installed. We'll also share some of your wonderful memories of the Blazers announcer Bill Schonely. And we have a new voice speaking out against tolling. But first, when Measure 110 decriminalized small amounts of all drugs in Oregon, it also set aside money for drug treatment. Now, getting that money out was a tortured process, but it is finally there. And one example is found in the Dalles. And that is our big story. The Dalles is a beautiful town in the Columbia Gorge full of great people. But it's not immune to the problems of drug abuse and homelessness. Recently, our Blair tagged along with an outreach worker to get a look up close at the challenges of trying to help that population. It's not easy, even with the help of some money from Measure 110.
Ready to roll? Well, we're off to Bread and Blessings. Bread and Blessings is where they hand out food for the houseless people.
It's the first stop of the day for the Dalles outreach worker Martin Rivas.
I am an engagement specialist from Bridges to Change.
Bridges to Change, the nonprofit where Martin works, connecting homeless people and those leaving prison with recovery services and housing.
And I'm here to help, man. I'm here to provide services for you.
Louis has been homeless in the Dalles for several months. He tells Martin he wants to go into detox.
If you're interested in treatment, man, I can definitely get you to a detox.
Recently, Bridges to Change expanded their outreach work to help people like Louis, all thanks to funding from Measure 110. That's the controversial law passed by voters back in 2020, which decriminalizes user amounts of street drugs and sends tax money to programs like Bridges to Change.
I think this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we're trying to do in this state.
While many argue the law has made the state's drug epidemic worse, Victor Velos, the regional manager for Bridges to Change, believes there's a greater problem.
We need a faster process of getting people to treatment when they're ready to go.
It's just you got to get him on the right time. You know, if he's feeling right now that he needs to go, he doesn't want to be here, and he's ready for treatment, then I'm right here.
Martin knows firsthand how quickly one has to act when going into detox.
I've been clean out for over 5 years, but I lived the life of an addict.
That life sent him to prison for 3 years.
When I came out of prison, I came straight into housing of Bridges to Change. So I did the whole 360. I went all the way around, and I was just so proud of myself, you know, and it works. Take a seat.
That message he tries to pass on to others.
Hey, thank you for your help. Yeah, no problem, man. So the plan is to go to the office. I am going to call Eastern Oregon Detox Center, and then we're going to get an over-the-phone interview.
You know, just hoping for better things, you know.
On our drive back to the nonprofit, we learn the closest detox center is 2 hours away.
And I have a participant here that is willing to go to treatment and to detox, and he feels like he's ready today.
It turns out Louis says he only uses THC, which doesn't qualify him for a bed.
In order for you to get help, you need to be on fentanyl, heroin, and all those tough drugs, you know. And so it's not fair.
Martin tells us of another homeless man with a similar story. He started using meth just to get a bed.
He's like, I don't really do meth no more, but I guess that's what he came back and he said, you know what? If that's what it takes, I'm dirty.
Please choose from the following.
2 hours.
Hi, Kathy. This is Martin Rivas from Bridges to Change. So I'm just trying to see what can you do for us.
And numerous phone calls later,
Please wait a moment.
Martin eventually connected with a counselor who once helped him. She was able to refer Louis to a housing program. Referrals are a crucial step in the process, one Martin isn't qualified to do.
And so she's going to make this a priority. So she's actually going to be able to see him on Tuesday and give him an assessment there.
If not for that connection, finding a place for Louis could have taken weeks, even months.
I feel like we've hit rock bottom and there's nothing left to do. If we don't get out, we're going to die.
We meet Rachel at the local food pantry after dropping off Louis. She feels like a prisoner to addiction and wants to detox, yet knows how difficult it is to find a bed. That issue was highlighted in a state audit just released on Measure 110. It points out that the benefits of investing in treatment programs outweigh the cost of those programs, since it's proven people continue using drugs if they're not able to get a bed. And according to a 2022 state-funded study, more than half of the substance use recovery and treatment organizations in the state say their capacity does not meet the current demand.
They don't really have anything here for help when it comes to drugs or alcohol.
It's now 3 o'clock. Martine's shift is almost over, so he gives Rachel a number to call. We don't know if she called it or what ended up happening to her.
The system is meant for you to fail.
Yet he keeps fighting to win.
I'm just prepared to help the next person. So as soon as I'm done with helping one person, I'm ready to go out there and help the next person, just to let them know that there is a change. There's something better out there.
So Blair and I are here together so she can give us a little bit more insight on what it was like reporting on that story. And I know that you found a lot of frustrations out there.
Yeah, most definitely. Those outreach workers have a lot of patience, I can tell you that. Just the hours of phone calls and running into roadblocks, one right after another, and then say they have to make a phone call the next day or follow up with the person who's, living on the street, and then they can't find them for whatever reason. For me, it was frustrating just watching for a day. I can't imagine, doing that over and over again with the system set up the way it is.
It is great to see on the ground that some of this 110 money is being used for outreach, and that outreach really is happening even in small towns like the Dalles.
Yeah, but I think what this story shows is, yes, the outreach is happening, but it only goes so far.
Right.
So, there's 2 outreach workers as part of that nonprofit. They go out, they meet people, they make relationships, but it kind of stops there sometimes. It takes a long time for them to actually get them into housing or into detox. And
it's not as efficient as you would think it should be.
No, because I learned there's so many different levels. They need a counselor to sort of sign off on someone going into treatment. It's not as easy as, oh, I work for this nonprofit, I met this person who needs help, can we get him in? It takes like 10 other steps. And
it's where's the paperwork,
yes,
and you got to sign this.
We have to do an interview, we have to do an assessment.
Well, it's a good look at why things are not as simple as we would like them to be.
Yeah, 100%.
Pick people off the street and get them into rehab. Well, it's not that simple.
Definitely not, yeah. And some of the people doing this work are just learning it themselves. I mean, the guy we profiled, he's been doing it for a month. So he's still learning himself.
Yeah, but he can relate to the people that are out on the street.
Very much so. He has something that, say, you and I don't have. He's lived through it. He's been to prison, been addicted, and now trying to make a difference. So he can already, jump ahead with those relationships.
Well, good for him for being out there and fighting the fight, even through the bureaucracy.
Yeah, 100%. It was really inspiring to see, and I wish them all the best.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought us that story. Thank you.
Thanks.
And now to an update on tolling. Yes, it looks like tolling is coming to I-5 and 205 in the greater Portland area. Some of you have asked if the Department of Transportation is really moving forward with the plan, and the answer is yes. Yes, they are. In fact, the Oregon Transportation Commission, which makes all the big decisions for transportation in the state, formally adopted a policy on tolling and congestion pricing recently. Now, why do we care? Because it bakes tolling into the state's transportation future. It's going to be here forever. And while it might seem like a minor development, we are committed to staying on top of all of these developments for you. The new policy does not set prices. That's going to come later. But it does talk about who should get discounts. It tells the Transportation Commission to explore discounts for frequent users of the system who have no other option to drive around the tolls. It also calls for discounts for low-income folks, but does not really define what low income is. And it calls for incentives for vehicles that can carry lots of folks, like shuttles, van pools, and carpools. It also allows money to be spent on the impacts on neighborhoods and for the health, safety, and congestion in that neighborhood. There are many more pages on the tolling policy that's now been adopted, but one part that really caught my attention was policy number 6.10H. I know. It reads, analyze and consider reducing toll rates when funding needs are achieved for the infrastructure project, but ensure that toll remains to help achieve statewide goals of congestion reduction, support long-term administration, maintenance, and operation. So really, trust me when I tell you that once the tolls are there, they are not going to go away. Now, love them or hate them, at least you know. A lot of you are telling us that you do hate the tolls. Another voice joining the no tolling argument, former Republican candidate for governor Christine Drazen. We talked about tolls today.
Where we're at right now, I don't believe that their approach to tolling is going to be beneficial to the communities and the surrounding communities or to Oregonians themselves. I think that they're going to use it in a way to pick winners and losers and hurt people, and it's not necessary and they shouldn't do it.
Drazen is getting back to normal life after losing in her race to become Oregon's next governor, but she is as plugged in as ever to the issues and thinks Oregonians should be able to vote on these tolls.
There's tolling, and then there's what is being proposed. And what's being proposed from my perspective is social engineering of who gets to use the roads when and at what cost. And I think that Oregonians have every right to rise up and oppose the current proposals that are out there.
Now, an interesting thing about this new policy, it came with lots of public comment, which ODOT says they paid attention to. You can decide how much attention. Here's some of the emails that they got on the tolling because they included them in their report. Jim writes, "I swear by all that is holy that I will drive every side street through neighborhoods and go around for miles if necessary to avoid any tolling created for roads already paid for." I was sort of chuckling there because I just love the way he started that. I know that it's born of frustration, though, and please don't really do that. Heather is also frustrated and writing, "I am so disgusted that ODOT is even considering the possibility of tolling our roads." Cecilia, however, disagrees. She supports tolling and wrote, "I think tolling is a great way to pay for new roads, bridges, and tunnels, or for updating the aforementioned." But Allie is not buying it. She told ODOT, "I am categorically opposed to any use of road tolls. Road tolls, by their very nature, are discriminatory." Now, I know that you have a lot of strong feelings about tolling, and I'm really not trying to sway the conversation one way or the other. But the comment log from ODOT, it's 340 pages long, and most of the comments on the first several pages that I looked at are negative. That's why I showed you more negative than positive tonight. We'd love to hear from you, though. Tolls, love them or hate them? Tell us why. Send an email to thestory@kgw.com or call 503-226-5090 and leave us a message. I look forward to hearing from you. Still to come on The Story. Back in the fall, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler approved a pilot program for technology called ShotSpotter. It's meant to detect gunshots in crime-ridden neighborhoods to allow for faster police response times and, in theory, more shooters behind bars. But even then, the program was mired in controversy. And now, the city is backtracking. Investigative reporter Evan Watson sifted through public records to find the reason why. That's next, when The Story returns. The city of Portland is backtracking its plans to move forward with something called ShotSpotter. That's a gunshot detection technology company. It's an effort to try and curb gun violence. In September, Mayor Wheeler decided to greenlight a ShotSpotter pilot program after reviewing a police oversight group's recommendation. But now that pilot program is no more. The city's asking for bids from other companies who manage gunshot detection themselves. It's still possible that Portland ends up with ShotSpotter, but now there's going to be competition. Investigative reporter Evan Watson did some digging and through public records was able to see why city leadership pumped the brakes.
Months after picking ShotSpotter as part of a new approach to gun violence, Portland city leaders are back at the listening stage.
So that everyone has a fair shot at making their pitch for why their technology would be the best for a pilot.
Stephanie Howard is the city's director of community safety. She told FitCog, a police oversight group, that Portland wants gunshot detection companies to present their proposals to the public and answer questions before the city commits.
We want them to be very concise and clear about what they're proposing and how their technology works, but also addressing concerns that we have heard all along.
Public records show Mayor Ted Wheeler and city leaders have received concerns about ShotSpotter's effectiveness. ShotSpotter uses sensors to record sounds of suspected gunshots before sending alerts and locations to police. It's widely used across the country, and ShotSpotter promotes a 97% accuracy rate. But that statistic is based on internal ShotSpotter data not available to the public, and the company relies on police officers to report errors before considering that any alert could be false. And that's difficult, because analysis of ShotSpotter alerts in cities like Chicago, San Diego, and Virginia Beach have found that alerts rarely lead to arrests or any evidence of a gun-related crime. Mayor Ted Wheeler's office did not answer why the city decided to reverse its course or why it took Portland 4 months to make this call. But Howard did say she heard from a competing company, as did FitCog member Gina Ronning.
I was able to attend a presentation regarding Eagle Technologies, and I thought it was really compelling.
Starting this summer, an Eagle Technology spokesperson had emailed city leaders touting Eagle Technology as very different from that of the well-known ShotSpotter, as it relies on energy waveform analysis, not audio. After receiving bids and holding public hearings, Howard says Portland will review its options.
Transparency in the data that they collect is going to be a really important thing, certainly from the mayor's office perspective. So we would be expecting, data around the technology to be available to the public and certainly to us so that we can evaluate for ourselves what we are finding effective.
If any company is selected, Howard says Portland now plans to start a 12-month pilot program in March.
Evan Watson joins me now. And Evan, how much is this program going to cost?
Well, that depends where the city of Portland wants these sensors and how large of an area they're going to cover. ShotSpotter, for example, charges about $65,000 to $90,000 per square mile when it comes to this. So it could be looking upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars to the millions based on cities of comparative sizes, but we're not going to know that until after they decide what area that looks like and also which company they're going to go with.
Interesting. And you've been pouring through hundreds of emails and public records. What does the city backtracking, what does that tell you now?
Yeah, well, it tells two things. First off, one, in all of those emails, I see a lot of the emails to the mayor's office and to city councilors from concerned Portland residents saying, hey, don't move forward with the ShotSpotter program. Mostly, that's what most of those emails said. And then secondly, it signals that, hey, between September and now, maybe city leadership said, hey, maybe we're a little bit too quick to jump the gun here. Let's pull back, take a more critical lens, see other options, and then see what we get from that and move forward at that stage.
Does it seem like they're going to go with one of these two companies, or maybe they'll scrap the whole thing?
It remains to be seen based on the effectiveness, the questions that come out here in the public comment section, and also the cost, which is kind of that big overarching factor. Maybe they'll decide it's too expensive in the long run, but more to come, especially after that public comment period we should have in a few weeks, I would expect.
Really great follow-up. Thanks, Evan. Appreciate it. Still to come on The Story, we're sharing your memories of the late Bill Schonely. So many of you sent us emails and called and left us voicemails of your fond remembrances of the Blazer legend. We'll feature a few of them when The Story returns.
Rip City, bingo, bango, bongo. Got to make your free throws. Rest in peace, broadcast legend Bill Schonely. Thanks for the memories.
And thanks for the comment, Joe from North Portland. Over the weekend, the great Bill Schonely passed away at the age of 93. During yesterday's show, we brought you a story of his incredible life and career and asked you to share some of your memories. And as always, you did not disappoint. What struck us as interesting while reading your emails and listening to your voicemails, it wasn't all Blazer related. Mike told us, I remember going to a Portland Beavers game, that's baseball, and was sitting just below Bill when we entered the 7th inning stretch. He started singing Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Being a tenor in my church choir, I joined him in singing loud and in harmony. At the end, he smiled at me and said, good job. I started laughing and said it was good singing with him and we'd have to do it again. He laughed and said, anytime, I'll miss him. And several of you fondly remembered time in church with Bill. Helen told us Bill Schonely was known to most Portlanders as the voice of the Trailblazers, but he was so much more. A memory that members of the Lake Grove Presbyterian Church members will cherish and miss was Bill Schonely reading the Gospels of Luke and Matthew on Christmas Eve between carols and hymns. It was always incredible. And a similar sentiment from Mary. I was 7 years old when the Blazers took the championship in 1977. We all sat around the kitchen table in our Northeast Portland home listening to Bill's every word. I also remember him reading the Christmas passages from the Bible at Lake Grove Presbyterian Church on Christmas Eve and seeing him sing in the choir with his beautiful wife, Dottie. What a legacy is left for the great state of Oregon and to Blazer fans across the United States and around the world. Even here in the newsroom, when we learned of his passing, so many of us remarked on how Schonely made you feel like a friend, even if you were a complete stranger. That's just the kind of guy that he was. Several of us longtimers at KGW shared memories like that, and so did you. Patricia says, my father, Eldon Snyder, just passed away last year at 97. He was a veteran of World War II. One of his favorite memories in his lifetime was being asked to be the hometown hero at a huge Blazer game in 2016. She sent us this picture, and her comment goes on, our whole family was invited to be the honored guest that night, but the standout moment for my dad was meeting Bill Schonely in the private dining room upstairs, Bill graciously speaking with my dad and allowing us to take pictures of the two of them together. And if yes, there of course were memories of Schonely behind the microphone for the Blazers, even for those of you who wouldn't consider yourselves experts of the game.
It's Richard, the Sean's fixture, to say the least, in Portland basketball. My life in sports has been kind of meager. I was always last to be picked on the basketball team in junior high and rarely excelled at anything to do with athletics, basketball, or anything else. But it's nice to hear the play-by-plays. It's nice especially to hear the play-by-plays because it helps me understand the game.
That's a nice memory. Even though we've mentioned it already, several of you look back to that June night in 1977 when the Blazers won it all.
The Portland Trailblazers have won the World Championship.
Well, Pat, what Blazer memories can you have that weren't wrapped up with Bill Schonely? And I swear he was the wind beneath their wings, helping to propel them to the championship in 1977. Yes, I was actually alive back then at 25, and while I could never afford to go to one of their games in person, when they beat Philly in 6, I could afford to drive all the way out to the airport, where I'd never even been before, but I plotted out there alone in the dark anyway so I could get to greet and meet and congratulate all of them. I met Bill Walton and Maurice Lucas, and I think Bobby Gross might have been his name. And Dave Twardzik, I always remembered him because he just had the weirdest name. And yes, the Shawns. But so those were the best individual memories I've ever had of him and the team. And maybe one day, if they remember his mantra, you've got to make your free throws, I might actually live to see another one. Probably not. But anyways, yeah, he'll be missed for sure.
Yes, he will. Keep sending your memories, questions, and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We're going to wrap things up right after this. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. But remember, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow.
This is KGW News.